Hello, Gemini, and welcome to my channel, Tarot by Gabrielle. This is going to be a reading for the end of January 2023, looking at your recent past, current energy, and immediate future. As you can see, I've already gone ahead and pulled the oracle cards for each, and I've clarified those. I have the overall energy for the reading. We'll dive into tarot for this reading, and then I have the 2 decks that I'll be using in my extended. Any information on the extended reading or on booking a personal reading with me is in the description box below. All right, Gemini. In your recent past, you have honor your feelings with the 7 of Cups. Your recent past was a lot of feeling very emotionally overwhelmed. Um, and I feel like, if there's anything I've learned on this journey and something that actually might be kind of hard for an air sign, for a Gemini, is not to over intellectualize your emotions. A lot of times, if not pretty much all the time, our emotions are merely insight into what needs to be processed and released. They are not telling you a truth. And so I had made the mistake early on my journey of whenever an emotion would arise, be it positive or negative, I would feel that it was a sign of something to come, or a sign of a truth. I would try to over intellectualize it. I tried to understand it. And if it was a negative emotion, I'd feel like there needed to be something that I needed to do to fix the emotion. So if I felt sad, I felt like there needed to be something that I needed to do in the material world in order to fix that sadness. Instead, what I've learned over time is that, and you hear it throughout a spiritual journey, that emotions are like waves. They do wash over you, and they're the only reason that they do that. Sorry, I have something in my eye. Oh, dog hair. Imagine that. Is so that they can be processed and released. So they wash over you to allow you to feel it, and you feel it deeply, and you feel it as as hard as you can. And then once you allow yourself to process that emotion, you allow that emotion to get out of your physical body. Well, then you can release it back into the ocean. It really is like a wave. The trick is not to allow yourself to act on emotion. Don't act on your anger. Don't act on your frustration. Don't act on your sadness, because that is how we self-sabotage. Do not let your emotions sabotage you. And I feel like that was what you were kind of dealing a lot with in your recent past. Now, I already know my readings aren't for everyone. This is not talking about higher, typical level surface stuff. This is diving deep into your subconscious to figure out what blocks need to be released from you so that you can attract what it is you're trying to attract. This is a very spiritual reading. Your overall energy is reflection with nirvana. Nirvana is the highest level of enlightenment in Buddhism, the highest level of enlightenment that an individual can reach. It's that state where an individual's desires and suffering go away. Now you have reflection here, which to me means that there's something that needs to be reflected on to increase your level of enlightenment. This has to do with your enlightenment. Your current energy is reveal what needs to be seen with the Hierophant. This literally is wisdom. It's wisdom, it's perspective. It can also it can entail enlightenment. And so what I'm saying is, in your current energy, there's a need to have some sort of perspective shift, to tap into some wisdom and to understand things from a much higher level than you're looking at them now. In your immediate future, you have forgive with the 9 of Pentacles. I am honestly pretty interested to see what this reading, or what this message means, because to me, this feels like self-forgiveness. And it feels like what you're ultimately searching for is self-forgiveness, whether or not you realize it. And it's interesting because for me, for the longest time, when I was in a situation, I thought I was wanting to forgive somebody else for the way that they treated me. So I was dwelling on trying to figure out how to forgive them. And I realized the entire time the way that I was ultimately able to forgive them was to forgive myself for allowing myself to be treated the way I was. Now I'll dive into that story more, most likely during this reading. But to me, it looks like there's this level of almost like self-forgiveness that you're ultimately wanting, that I feel like you don't really understand you're wanting. Again, enlightenment, it's tricky. Recent past for Gemini, clarifying honor your feelings with the 7 of Cups. Recent past for Gemini, clarifying honor your feelings with the 7 of Cups. A new beginning with the King of Cups in reverse. You did step into a new beginning in your recent past. Now, I feel like you might kind of be in a limbo period between an ending and a beginning, or you might be trying to step into a new beginning and struggling to do so. With the King of Cups in reverse, oh, Gemini, you have a tendency, and I don't know why this message is coming through, but you have a tendency to be a little bit emotionally abusive with yourself. It's interesting. It's almost like you have a tendency to be really hard on yourself. You have a tendency to maybe gaslight yourself into believing that you're worse than you think you are. It's almost like you talk down to yourself a lot, Gemini. And I feel like what you need to realize is that's that level of self-forgiveness it's needed. Now you can have regrets, sure, but when you get to a certain point where you learn the lesson from the situation, if you really have learned your lesson from things that have gone on in your life, then there really is no such thing as regret, because you can learn that you got here because of where what had happened, what had taken place. Now, it's funny because that this is coming up now, because a couple of weeks ago, and this story relates, I promise. But a couple of weeks ago, I've been struggling in therapy with figuring out my personal diagnosis for me, because it isn't really generalized anxiety. It's not really depression. I felt like it was PTSD related, but I wasn't exactly sure and to what extent or where it would really come from. I've obviously experienced some traumatic, situations in my life, but I've healed from most of them, so I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And my therapist, I had kind of talked to her about this when I first started, like months and months and months ago, almost a year ago actually now. And she was like, she was like, I think I've kind of figured out the root of your diagnosis. And I was so excited. I was like, heck yeah. Because for me, understanding helps me kind of heal, and kind of release myself from the trappings of the side effects of whatever the diagnosis was. And she said, you have PTSD. She said, and I believe it's from yourself. She said, you've self-sabotaged so much in your past, and you are now so self-aware of the ways that you self-sabotaged that you do not trust yourself to not do it again. So I got diagnosed with PTSD from the way I treated myself. And I feel like that really relates to this reading, because it's talking about not being so hard on yourself for the mistakes that you've made, because the mistakes you've made have led you here. And where you are now is someone that you should be very proud of. So I feel like your recent past was a lot of kind of dealing with a lot of those emotions. But what you're now doing is, it's like when you get those emotions out, when you can process those emotions and work through those emotions, and then you can release those emotions, you are able to see things with a clear mind, with a clear perspective. And I feel like that's where you are in your current energy. But let's get more for Gemini's recent past. More for Gemini's recent past. The Emperor. Gemini, you're showing up as the Emperor here. You have the Fool and the Emperor. My goodness, with the Four of Cups in reverse. Now, whether you're male or female, you're still showing up as this Emperor here. This Four of Cups in reverse is the need. It's usually the need to make sure that you're not focusing on the wrong things, but I feel the need to look in this book. Sometimes this happens. I obviously know how to read tarot, but sometimes I feel like there's a certain word or something that I'm missing here. So let's look at the Four of Cups. Boredom, inexperience, depression, or separation. You were struggling with some mental health in your recent past, some depression. And that's why it felt so overwhelming. Interesting. Now, this is interesting too, because it almost feels like the depression stems from regret. Interesting. That is an insanely specific message for somebody out there. The depression stems from regret. You regret something. Don't regret. Learn instead. Don't regret. What is meant for you hasn't passed you. What is meant for you hasn't passed you. And also, what you've lost or how you feel you've messed up can be corrected. That's something else you need to know. Some situation can be corrected. Interesting. Recent past for Gemini. I kind of want to take this card instead. Just is a little bit more. Okay. Wish you could just see that. That Page of Pentacles flew out. Yeah, because there's still an opportunity for what you want here. That's funny. There's still an opportunity for what you want, but there's a lot of healing that needs to be done between then and now. Now you're doing the healing, whether or not you're realizing it. Recent past for Gemini. Recent past for Gemini. Depression stemming from regret. The Six of Wands in reverse, so the Temperance in reverse. You don't believe that you deserve good things, Gemini, and I think that you don't believe it because you don't believe that you're the kind of person that deserves good things. Now, whether or not this is conscious or not, I'm unsure of, and that's too specific for this reading. But, one thing that I will most likely mention in all my readings is that 95% of our movements, choices, and decisions are subconscious. Meaning 95% of how we interact with the world on a day-to-day basis is coming from our subconscious. Only 5% is conscious. Meaning your subconscious is made up of habits, which you've thought over and over, how you've acted over and over, how you've reacted over and over to situations. That has become you. That's become your 95%. Now, that 95% is responsible for 95% of what manifests in your world. So, in order to be on top of your manifestations, because again, manifestation is something that just kind of, it happens. Whether or not we're consciously involved in it or not, we are always manifesting our reality. And our reality is being manifested by our response to our current circumstances. Your response to to your current circumstances is how you're manifesting your future circumstances. Now, when I talk about the law of attraction, and in the book The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, she talks about how one of the hardest, I don't think it's actually her who talks about it because there's a bunch of different speakers in this book, but one of the people in the book talks about how the hardest concept of the law of attraction to truly start um, to internalize is the concept that you are responsible for your current circumstances right now based on your past reactions and responses to your reality. Now something came up when I was saying that last reading that I did for Gemini. I had someone comment on it and say the violence that I've encountered in my life is not due to my past experiences. And then they went on to be a little bit more aggressive and were like, you're talking about concepts that aren't yours to talk about. Now, first and foremost, I disagree with that because I believe my purpose is to talk about my personal truths, which are these concepts that have drastically changed my life forever. But aside from that, the comment within itself talked about how she did not attract violence based on her past level of thinking. Now, please, this is where you need to understand the difference between fault and responsibility. You are not at fault for what you have attracted into your life. You are not at fault for the 95% of you that has been shaped by your experiences, by your childhood, by what your parents have taught you, by what society has taught you, by what you have learned to believe about yourself, whether that it comes down to believing that you are not worthy, you are not capable, you are not lovable, you are a bad person, you are whatever it is, whatever your internal belief system has picked up from your entire experience, that is not your fault. What you have attracted into your life is not your fault. However, it is your responsibility to dive into where that came from and how you can flip it on its head. Use the 5% of you to retrain yourself to think differently about yourself and this world so that you can attract better for yourself. You are responsible for your reality. Nobody else is. Now, that does not mean you are at fault. And I feel like this is a really big lesson for the Geminis watching this reading to understand that you do not need to be hard on yourself for how things have turned out. You can forgive yourself for the way that you have acted because a lot of it was coming from your own abandonment issues, your own trauma that you've experienced is how you've attracted certain things into your life. So allow yourself grace in this moment and really try to learn the difference between fault and responsibility because there is a big, big difference there. All right, current energy for Gemini. Current energy for Gemini. And if you have experienced something wildly traumatic, this just might not be the message that you need to hear right now, and that's okay. This just might not be your reading. This is a general reading, guys. Current energy for Gemini. Reveal what needs to be seen with the Hierophant. The Chariot. Oof. You are struggling right now, Gemini, with some serious emotion. Whew. Okay, so things are moving forward. This just like it hit me like almost took my breath away, that energy. Um this 5 of cups is stemming from regret. Regret. That's the biggest word in this reading that keeps coming through. And I don't even know if you realize that you regret something. No, you do. This is a very conscious regret. But what needs to be seen about this situation? It's almost like there's a need to learn from your mistakes, not dwell on them. Because there's been a lot of dwelling on what you've done instead of learning. Because, one of my favorite quotes is it says, and it's an unknown quote, but it's in this deck actually, my Soul Truth Tarot deck that I'll be using to pull as an advice card from Spirit. But the quote is, a person who blames others has not begun their lesson. A person who blames themselves has begun their lesson, and a person who blames no one has finished their lesson. And again, blame is not the goal. You are not trying to actually blame yourself. But when you can look at your responsibility in the matter, how you could have done things differently, how you could have responded differently to your past circumstances, then you can take the control back from your world and understand that you might be a victim of certain situations, but you don't have to continue to be a victim moving forward. And I feel like that's why there's this regret of like, I should have done that. This wouldn't have happened if I didn't do that. Not that it needed to happen, but you will be able to get to a point eventually in your future where you can look back and you can say, I understand why it did. Because I feel like the Gemini that I'm speaking to is angry with themselves right now. And I'm a little afraid that that's going to get projected as anger at me for a lot of these messages that I have. And that's not for every Gemini, but I'm feeling some anger in this reading, and understand that that anger is healthy and it's okay, but do not project it, and don't allow yourself to act on it. That goes back to the honor your feelings that we were talking about. Okay, current energy for Gemini. The Tower. Yeah, you're experiencing a tower around your 9 of Pentacles. Widen your perspective, Gemini. Try as hard as it might be right now to widen your perspective and to look past the circumstance and try to find the meaning. Try to find the meaning. Every single thing that happens to you happens for a reason. Everything that's happening to you is happening for you, not to you. Now, it's so hard to understand that when you experience traumatic events. Trust me. Trust me, trust me, trust me. And this isn't, this is not what I'm saying I'm feeling here, but just my own personal story. I was in a fairly aggressively abusive, emotionally abusive relationship about, my gosh, that'd be almost 4 years ago now. And I stayed with this person through all of it. I knew before even getting into a relationship with this person what kind of person they were and how they treated the people around them. And I still got into a relationship with them because I had the mentality of I can fix them. I was still in my era of trying to fix myself through other people. And I mean, this person brought me to my freaking knees. Like I had never felt so low, so empty, so bad about myself in my entire life. And um I, for the longest time after we broke up, I was so angry at him. I was so angry. I could not even, and I didn't even realize that I was angry at him. Like it came out in different ways, and it affected my relationships with other people. Like it completely ruined my life. But after I was able to process through that anger of putting all the blame on him, I was able to turn it back on me and realize I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who got into that relationship. I'm the one who stayed. It wasn't my fault that things happened to me the way they did. However, I didn't see my value enough to say, this is not the right person for me. I do not deserve to get treated like I know he treats people. And so what I'm saying here is widening your perspective and looking at the bigger picture. And that could be the other way around too. You could be blaming yourself for how something went down, and there's a need to look at maybe how the other person played a role too, so that you can release yourself from it. There's a forgiveness that's needed here. I feel like it's self-forgiveness. But the Tower, it's always looked at as such a negative card, but it's it's removing the illusion. It's the falling away of what does not serve you. And so just because things feel so intense right now, understand that it's pushing you to see things different. It's pushing you to a next level of enlightenment. And enlightenment, spiritual enlightenment, is not an easy feat. If it were, everybody would be doing it because it's so freeing. But the reflection that's needed right now is going to lead you to the enlightenment. So reflect on the situation. Don't dwell on the emotion. Goodness, this is kind of a tough reading, Jim. I'm really sorry you guys are dealing with this. I get it. I mean, I get the energy. I feel the energy, and I feel for you guys. But know that there's still good things for you in the future. What has happened can be corrected. Yeah. You guys are stuck on conflict right now. Could be conflict with the Queen of Pentacles, with an earth sign. Doesn't have to be. Remember, I'm trying to read below the surface. Earth sign would be Capricorn, Virgo, or Taurus. But either way, understand that any external conflict is direct reflection of internal conflict. Any external conflict is direct reflection of internal conflict. There's some sort of inner conflict that you are having with yourself that needs to be brought to light. If you feel like somebody isn't showing you enough appreciation, how are you not being more grateful for your life? If you feel like whatever it is, whatever, again, goes back to that, a person who blames others hasn't started a lesson, a person who blames himself has, a person who blames no one has finished a lesson. When you can look at your perspective of your fault in a situation, you can set yourself free. This is not me saying that you are to blame. This isn't me saying that you are a bad person. This is me saying that I have had to do this for traumatic events in my life, and other people that I know are on a spiritual journey have had to do this for situations in their life. It's that whole concept of a twin flame. When you can stop looking at that person and saying, well, they do this, they do that, they do these things, they did all this to me, and you can start seeing how that is how that's reflected in you. Because look at that. In that reflection is this person's face. So look at, it's almost like look in the mirror. Look at the reflection. Look at what is trying to be brought to light within you. What is the universe trying to tell you about you? Not about someone or something else, but what is the universe trying to tell you about you? All right, immediate future for Gemini. But yeah, goodness, there is some regret here, Gems. I don't want you guys to regret anything. You have nothing to regret. You have a lot to learn, but nothing to regret. Immediate future for Gemini. Immediate future for Gemini, clarifying forgive, and the Nine of Pentacles. There's that surrender. Oh my goodness, I was waiting for it. There is a little bit of letting go in your immediate future, Gemini, and I feel like it is going to feel so good. It's going to feel so good because it's going to allow you to let go of all of this emotion that you've just been like clenching to with your fist. The regret, possibly some shame, a lot that needs to be like guilt too, like guilt, regret, shame. That's the general, like my sacral chakra is really popping off right now. There's a lot of and also my like solar plexus. So in those two chakras, maybe you need to do some chakra work, listen to some binaural beats. I just feel like there's this level of holding on to so much in you and not allowing yourself grace. There's a need to grace changes everything. Allow yourself grace, Gemini. Immediate future for Gemini. Ooh. The reason that you stay stuck is because of a fear of vulnerability. And that could be fear of vulnerability with yourself too. looking at a situation for what it is without blame and judgment is freaking hard. It is so hard to do because our entire lives we're taught to judge everything, to take an opinion or a stance on every single situation, to choose a side. Don't let yourself get so caught in who's to blame. Now, if you've been through something absolutely traumatic, like a violent situation, it's pretty obvious who's to blame there, right? Now that goes back to that situation of, if you've dealt with something like that, this might not be the message for you right now. This is more for the Geminis that are dealing with something a little less intense than that, but still quite a bit of regret nonetheless. So don't stay stuck. Don't allow yourself to stay stuck because you're afraid of vulnerability. You can only have as healthy of a relationship with this world, with money, with your significant other. You can only have as much of a healthy relationship with the world as you have with yourself. And right now, you guys aren't being very kind to yourself. If this is your reading, you're being very hard on yourself, and there's a need to give yourself some grace here, while also trying to see the truth of the situation. There's the Page of Swords. I like that, with the King of Swords in reverse. As a child, you could have experienced some, the reason you're treating yourself the way that you are is because of the way that you were treated as a kid. Being hard on yourself and expecting perfection is possibly the way that you were raised. And so it's really hard for you to understand that grace comes from the recognition that you are a human being. You are learning. You're here to learn. You're here to grow. You're here to evolve. You're not here to be hard on yourself for not having all the answers. All right. My, oh my, was that an intense reading, Gemini. I am already kind of nervous to see the comments on this one. I'm going to hop on over to the extended. I'm going to clarify these messages, dive in deeper, and provide some advice, as well as pull an advice card from the divine at the end. Thank you guys so much for the support of my channel. It means the absolute world to me. I'm sending you guys nothing but love and healing for your 2023, and I hope it turns out to be exactly what you want it to be. All right. Thank you, Gemini.